I woke up to a half-built HOA pavilion standing on my lakeshore on my land without a single permit, and 48 hours later, they were suing me for $1 million, accusing me of destroying community property. What they didn't know was that I'd documented every step they took and that paper trail was about to bring their entire operation down. I've lived on this land most of my adult life. My name's Remy Carter, and the shoreline you're picturing isn't just a pretty view. I sip coffee over in the mornings. It's a working piece of land. It holds the spillway access for the dam, the maintenance corridor the county relies on, and survey markers that haven't moved since before I bought the place. I know every rock, every post, every bend in that shoreline. I've walked it in storms and fire season and freezing dawns when the lake is still half asleep. So when I rode my ATV up the maintenance road that morning and saw fresh lumber where there had never been lumber before, my stomach dropped before my brain even caught up. There it was, a pavilion frame. Clean cuts, metal brackets shining like they'd just come off the truck gravel pad, still pale enough to leave boot prints. An HOA banner was tied to one of the posts, flapping in the breeze like a flag planted after a conquest. 2 signs were staked in the dirt: Community Amenity Improvement Authorized Construction. It almost looked official if you ignored the inconvenient fact that the land under it was mine. I killed the engine and just stood there for a second. The silence felt wrong. The air smelled like sawdust and diesel smells that don't belong on my shoreline unless I put them there. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Film first, feel later. That's a rule I learned the hard way. I panned across the structure slowly, deliberately. No permit notice, no contractor board, no county stamp, nothing. I crouched near one of the posts and angled the camera down. A survey pin I'd driven years ago sat less than 2 feet from the footing, the markings still clear. Dead center inside my parcel. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a fence line dispute. This was a structure planted squarely on my land, built by people who assumed I wouldn't stop them. As I kept filming, anger crept in, not the loud kind, not the kind that makes you shout or swing, the quiet kind, the kind that tightens your jaw and sharpens your focus. Because whoever authorized this didn't just take a risk. They assumed I wouldn't matter. They assumed an HOA logo was enough to steamroll a landowner who didn't want trouble. They assumed building first would force me into silence later. I was still recording when a white SUV rolled up the maintenance road, spotless enough to look ridiculous on gravel. The driver's door opened before the engine even shut off. Bethany Crowell stepped out like she was arriving at a ribbon cutting instead of trespassing. HOA badge clipped to her jacket clipboard tucked under her arm, that rehearsed smile people use when they're about to deliver bad news and expect you to thank them for it. "Good morning, Remy," she called. "I see you've discovered the new community pavilion." I didn't answer. I just turned the camera toward her. She noticed and lifted her chin, pretending it didn't bother her. "You built this on private land," I said, keeping my voice steady. "My land." She tapped her clipboard with a manicured finger. "Actually, this falls within the revised Community Improvement Zone. The board voted last quarter to enhance lakefront access." "No," I said. "You voted to improve HOA property. This isn't HOA property." She opened a folder like she'd been waiting for the cue. "Remy, you really need to keep up with the updates. It's all right here. Development plans, HOA authorization form standards. We're creating amenities that raise property values for everyone." "Show me the permit," I said. Her smile flickered. "Just for a second. The what?" "The county permit. The one required for any structure near a waterway. And the one required for anything that interferes with a dam access route." She shifted her weight. "The HOA has broad authority to—" "That's not a permit," I cut in. She held up a glossy document like it was a shield. HOA headers, signature stamps. It looked official if you didn't know what to look for. None of it came from the county that actually governs the land. I dialed the county clerk on speaker. Darla Pierce answered on the second ring. "Darla, it's Remy. Quick question. Any permits filed under Elk Hollow HOA for structures on Lake Carter's North Shore?" Paper shuffled on her end. "Nope. Nothing filed, nothing pending." "Any easements recorded that give them access to build on my shoreline?" "No, sir. Your parcel hasn't changed since 2001. Bethany's face drained of color in stages. I thanked Darla and hung up. "You didn't have to humiliate me like that," she snapped. "I didn't," I said. "You did that by showing up with fake authority." Her jaw tightened. "You're being uncooperative. This community needs improvements, Remy. Not every decision can revolve around your personal preferences." I almost laughed. "This isn't a preference. This is ownership." She crossed her arms. "The board is united on this. Resistance won't look good for you." "Resistance to illegal construction?" I asked. She turned sharply toward her SUV. Before getting in, she looked back and said, "People who block progress usually regret it." The dust from her tires settled around my boots. I stared at the pavilion frame again, those posts sunk into my shoreline like stakes in a claim. My pulse wasn't racing. It was heavy, certain. This wasn't over. That night I found out how far they were willing to push it. Long after dark headlights cut through the trees near the ridge, I killed my engine and stayed still, filming from the shadows. A truck rolled down unloaded generators, joists, brackets. Night work. Quiet, fast, deliberate. They were racing something. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about a pavilion. It was about establishing presence, about creating a done deal before anyone could stop them. The next morning, the real muscle showed up. A matte black pickup glided down the road like it owned it. Marcus Hale stepped out. Developer, investor, the kind of man who wears expensive boots that have never seen mud. Bethany climbed out of the passenger side, suddenly looking very relieved. Marcus smiled like this was all just business. "Remy, there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," I said. "You built on my land." "The community is expanding," he replied. "Improvements are necessary. This site is perfect." "Perfect because you don't own it." "Everything's for sale," he said quietly. "Not this," I answered. He leaned in slightly. "Once a structure stands long enough, the county values continuity. They rarely force removal. You'd be fighting uphill." There it was, the strategy. Build fast, stall, bury me in paperwork until the land became theirs by inertia. For the first time since this started, doubt crept in. Real doubt. Not about the facts, those were clear, but about the fight itself. I live alone. I don't have a board or a developer bankroll behind me. I could already feel the pressure building, the way people start to look at you sideways when an HOA starts whispering your name with words like obstruction and liability. And then it got worse. Flyers started showing up in town. Dangerous man destroys community property. Unstable rancher blocks progress. People I'd known for years avoided eye contact. A cashier who used to ask about the lake barely looked up. Lies move fast when they're printed neatly. That night, standing on my porch, staring at the water, I felt something I hadn't expected: exhaustion. A deep, heavy tiredness. I wondered if it would be easier to just let it go. Let them have their pavilion. Let the lawyers sort it out later. I even asked myself the question that hurts the most. What if I'm wrong? The answer came from two people who showed up when I needed them most. Tom Bennett, a carpenter who actually knows what he's looking at, walked the site with me and shook his head. "This thing's a hazard," he said. "Footings are wrong. Drainage is a joke. Someone could get hurt." And Sarah Whitfield, my attorney, didn't sugarcoat it. "If that structure collapses and blocks the spillway, liability hits you first, not them. You can't afford to do nothing." That was the moment I stopped doubting myself. Not because I was angry, but because I was responsible. So I did exactly what the law allows. I posted a stop work order. I documented everything. And then calmly, methodically, with the camera running, I dismantled the structure piece by piece. No smashing, no shortcuts. Every beam stacked, every bolt preserved. Abatement, not destruction. When Bethany and Marcus showed up and saw the shoreline bare, they lost it. Bethany screamed. Marcus stayed quiet, which was worse. They slammed a folder into my hands. Invoices, labor, materials, $1 million, a lawsuit. Sheriff Morales showed up and listened. Looked at the stacks of lumber. Looked at the survey pins. "This isn't vandalism," he said. "This is careful disassembly." The lawsuit landed anyway. And that's when the house of cards collapsed. A fake permit number. Emails from inside the HOA. Recorded meetings where Bethany said, "Just build it. We'll bury him in motions. Plans for expanding past the pavilion straight through my access corridor. In court, the judge didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She dismissed their claims with prejudice, awarded full legal fees, and referred the case for criminal review. Bethany went pale. Marcus stared at the table. I walked out of that courtroom lighter than I'd felt in weeks. Not because I won, but because the truth held. The shoreline is quiet again now. Empty. Undisturbed. And the lesson I carry with me is simple. If someone tries to take what's yours by force or paperwork, stand your ground, because silence is exactly what they're counting on.